For 20 years, this moment has lived in the cultural memory as passionate mentorship. Tyra Banks, the supermodel, the host, the mother figure, pushing a contestant because she cared too much. That is the version the show wanted you to remember. Tiffany Richardson, the young woman on the receiving end of that, screaming, just went on Instagram and told a different story. She called Tyra Banks a bully. She said the show treated her like garbage on and off camera. She said the nastiest things were said about her and her son. And she challenged Tyra directly. I bet you won't sit down with me face to face and talk about it. 20 years of the wrong narrative. And Tiffany Richardson is done with it. To understand what actually happened to Tiffany Richardson and every contestant who passed through the America's Next Top Model machine, you have to understand what reality television was in the early 2000s. It was completely unregulated. The actors on NCIS and the Drew Carey Show had unions. They had agents. They had contracts with protections built in. They had legal recourse if the production environment became genuinely harmful. Reality television contestants in 2003 had none of that. They signed releases that gave the production company almost unlimited power over their image, their footage, and their story. They received minimal compensation, and they entered an environment specifically designed to manufacture psychological distress because psychological distress was the product. ANTM did not cast for modeling potential. It cast for trauma potential, for financial instability, for personal history that would make a contestant emotionally vulnerable enough to break on camera in a way that would generate ratings. Tiffany Richardson was a young mother from a difficult background who came on the show, believing it was an opportunity. The production saw her vulnerability and treated it as raw material. And here is what made the top model era specifically insidious: the way the exploitation was packaged. Tyra Banks did not present herself as a network executive running a ratings machine. She presented herself as a mentor, a mother figure, a successful black woman pulling other women up behind her. That framing was the shield. As long as the screaming and the humiliation could be categorized as tough love, as long as the cruelty could be rebranded as passion, the production was protected from accountability. The Netflix documentary Reality Check gave Banks a platform to address the Tiffany moment. She said she went too far. She said it was bigger than Tiffany, that it was about black girls and societal pressures and deep personal feeling. Tiffany Richardson read that explanation and responded directly. She called it lies. She said the edit made it look like Tyra cared. She said she knows how she was treated the whole time, on and off camera, and that treatment was not the behavior of someone who cared. That is not a misunderstanding between two people. That is a woman who was harmed by an institution, watching that institution explain away the harm with a narrative she did not recognize as her own experience. The America's Next Top Model machine did not exist in isolation. It was one of dozens of shows built on the same blueprint during the most unregulated era in television history. The formula was consistent across the genre. Cast people with genuine need, financial instability, family trauma, desperate ambition. Isolate them from their support systems. Control their sleep and their food and their information. Apply psychological pressure until the breakdown arrives. Film the breakdown. Edit the breakdown into the story the producers had already decided to tell, and then package the whole thing as empowerment, as opportunity. As a mentor who cares so much, she screams. Tiffany Richardson's son, the little boy she talked about throughout her season as her reason for wanting more, was killed during a robbery in 2023. He was 21 years old. She has spent the years since her season working with disabled people in Miami, building a life entirely outside the industry that used her grief and her vulnerability as entertainment. She owed that industry nothing. She gave it the most human parts of herself on camera, and for 20 years it returned the favor by packaging her breakdown as a punchline. Tyra Banks said she went too far. That is true, but going too far implies a line that was otherwise respected. Tiffany Richardson is saying there was no line, that the behavior on camera was consistent with the behavior off it, that the edit protected the brand, not the contestant. The most famous moment in reality television history was not tough love. It was what happens when an unregulated machine decides that a vulnerable person's dignity is worth less than a ratings spike. Tiffany Richardson has been saying that for 20 years. The rest of us are just now listening.